Hello, everyone. Thank you all for joining us for today's webinar on methanol fuel for clean cooking. I am Prakriti Sethi from Methanol Institute, and we've been joined by some eminent panelists with us who will shed light on methanol fuel and on how methanol fuel can play a pivotal role in reducing indoor air pollution, which is caused by using polluting fuels in our households and kitchens. It's quite timely to discuss this topic as due to COVID, most of the households are working in-house, and they're working in-house, and they are cooking, spending more time on cooking. So what we'll do first, just some housekeeping items that I would like to discuss. All participants are muted, and you have a questions tab on the right-hand side of the control panel, where you can see and type in your questions, which will be discussed with our panelists post their presentations. Below the questions tab, you have a handout tab, where you can find brochure of Methanol Institute or Cook Stove brochure, where you can download it easily, as well as today's presentation. So without further ado, I would just like to start with Methanol Institute's presentation, a brief introduction of who we are and what we do. So as most of you may know, that Methanol Institute is a global trade association for the methanol industry. We've been in the industry for around more than 30 years and have expanded our regional offices from Washington, D.C., Beijing, Singapore, Brussels, and Delhi. We are a member-driven association, and our member cascades down from Tier 1 to Tier 4. Tier 1 includes members who are the largest methanol producers in the world. Tier 2 and Tier 3 includes mid-size and small-scale methanol producers. Tier 4 includes innovative as well as technological provider companies who are looking at promoting methanol as an energy product. Methanol is a very versatile compound which can be produced from diverse feedstocks such as natural gas, mostly with natural gas, and other renewable feedstocks. It is mostly used in the production of derivative chemicals such as acetic acid and formaldehyde. It is also an emerging fuel which can be used in automobile, marine applications, as well as industrial boiler, and of course cook stoves. Due to its property, it is a clear liquid chemical which is used in everyday products such as chemicals, cosmetics, as well as plastic. So we'll show a short video that we have prepared on methanol as a fuel, which showcases how methanol can be used as a future energy product and their diverse applications.
In a fast-changing world, it is time to find innovative and efficient solutions to provide future-proof fuels. As the simplest alcohol, methanol comprises of hydrogen, oxygen, and a single carbon atom. It has the highest hydrogen to carbon ratio of any liquid fuel. These chemical properties contribute to methanol's sustainability as a petrochemical feedstock and fuel. Methanol is commonly produced from natural gas. Increasingly, methanol is produced from renewable feedstocks such as renewable energy and carbon capture, municipal waste, and agricultural waste. Methanol produced from such feedstocks creates circular economies, where what is normally deemed waste is used to produce methanol, which is a useful and higher value product. Such processes effectively promote sustainability by creating value from waste and diversifying how waste is managed. Methanol is used to produce a wide range of ubiquitous products, such as materials for constructing houses, paints, plastics, car parts, and medical equipment such as personal protective equipment. When produced from renewable feedstocks, renewable methanol becomes a sustainable, net carbon neutral fuel, compliant with climate goals. Upon combustion, methanol's chemical compound and physical properties result in significantly lower emissions. Specifically, the absence of carbon-to-carbon bonds in methanol molecules is key to the negligible emission of soot or particulate matter, and the oxygen atom contributes to a fuller and cleaner combustion, making methanol an environment-friendly fuel that contributes to better air quality. As one of the most widely traded commodities in the world, methanol is available at more than 100 ports around the world. This reduces infrastructure costs for the marine industry to transition to methanol. Conventional methanol reduces emission of sulfur oxides by 99%, nitrogen oxides by 60%, and particulate matter by 95%. Net carbon neutral renewable methanol will meet the International Maritime Organization's goal of reducing greenhouse gas emissions by 50% by 2050. Inland transport, methanol can be blended with gasoline or used as a standalone fuel in order to boost fuel quality and efficiency while lowering emissions. To improve air quality with a cost-efficient solution, China is fueling land transport vehicles with pure methanol. Iceland is fueling a fleet of cars with renewable methanol. Italy is blending A20, a blend of methanol, ethanol and gasoline. This blend is being demonstrated in a car-sharing fleet with plans for it to be made available to consumers. The United States uses methanol regularly in motorsports. Certain regions in China, India, Nigeria and Tanzania have adopted methanol as an alternative fuel for cook stoves. Methanol's clean burning properties improve indoor air quality, lowering the risk of respiratory diseases. Methanol is also being used in fuel cells to produce electricity in applications like range extenders in electric vehicles, propulsion for marine vessels, unmanned aerial vehicles, telecommunication towers, and military equipment. As a liquid at room temperature and pressure, methanol is a convenient hydrogen carrier for fuel cells. Increasingly, methanol is being used as a fuel in industrial boilers to produce heat or steam for the pharmaceutical and manufacturing industries. The methanol burner used in industrial boilers is also being used in other applications, such as producing heat for drying tea leaves or tobacco, ceramic sintering, and residential heating. As you can see, there are no shortages of available applications for methanol as a clean and net carbon-neutral fuel. Methanol is the key to a more energy-efficient and clean future.
So as you can see, methanol has been used in diverse applications, and one of which is methanol cook stoves. So methanol cook stoves are mostly and widely being used in China, India, Nigeria, Tanzania, and some parts of South Africa as well. Due to its inherent quality, which helps in reducing SOx, NOx, as well as particulate matter, it helps in reducing indoor air pollution and provides it as a clean fuel with areas without access to gas. It also helps in reducing fuel consumption up to 40% due to its high level of energy efficiency. China is one of the biggest market of methanol producer as well as consumption. Last year, it had around 3 million metric tons of methanol produced for cooking, consumed for cooking in 2019. Recently, Methanol Institute has launched Cook Store brochure, which you can find in your Hands Out tab, and you can download it easily. That outlines around 3 to 4 countries which have been using methanol cook stoves and the drivers like such as technological, political, as well as economic drivers, which helps in adoption of methanol cook stoves. So clean cooking is a very global problem, and due to indoor air pollution, it brings, and it is accompanied by a burden of economic cost to the economy, as well as gender inequality, as well as health hazards. So this global problem has a very global solution, and methanol fits in due to its property of reducing indoor air pollution, low risk of flammability, which helps in improved safety, also is ease of handling and transportation. It is also a cheaper alternative to different alternative fuels, which helps in ultimately leading to achieving sustainable development goals such as lowering greenhouse gas, improving indoor air quality, health hazards, as well as promoting gender equality. So this is also aligned with sustainable development goals. So methanol is a very global clean, as well as a very sustainable future which promotes sustainability globally. So you can see we have these contacts. You can reach out to us according to your geographies that you're situated in and according to your interests. Thank you very much for our presentation of Methanol Institute. Now I will move on to our panelists. Our first panelist was Ms. Reema Nanavaty. Unfortunately, she is not able to join us today due to medical reasons. We hope she recovers soon, but we have her colleague, Mr. Devesh Shah, the CEO of Grassroots Trading Network of Women. Mr. Devesh Shah, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Prakriti ji. Quick question: am I audible, loud and clear?
Yeah, you're audible.
Thank you very much. Namaste and namaste. The first namaste is from Devesh to all the panelists and participants and organizers. And the second namaste is from 1.7 million SEWA members who are fighting poverty. Gandhiji once said that poverty is the worst kind of violence. And when I say poverty, we can put it under three buckets: financial poverty, time poverty, and energy poverty. And so in SEWA, we look at all of our activities that we do in SEWA, whether it is energy related or whether it is food or nutrition or clothing or shelter related solutions that we try to work on. We try to see how eventually it converges to eliminating poverty. So having said that, in SEWA somewhere around in 2004, we realized that energy is one area which needs to be given a separate thrust, and therefore within SEWA a special purpose vehicle, a Section 25 company, was set up, a not-for-profit organization, which is Grassroots Trading Network for Women. The idea was that this organization works exclusively on the energy needs of the grassroots people. Now, energy, if I say it is a pretty broad, a scope or a thing that we are talking. So, starting from lighting to cooling and cooking, everything comes under energy access. And somewhere in 2012, SEWA in a very big way in GTL, we went ahead and promoted Cleancook stoves. And at that time, unfortunately, there wasn't much, I would say, design consideration with respect to how women are using and all those things. And we had to shelve it for some time. So last 2 years, there's again an increased interest among people for the clean cooking. And before we go further into it, I just wanted to say that in this whole aspect of clean cooking, I think we should not see it as a clean cooking, problem, but rather we need to look at it as a nexus where work, food, energy in the context of grassroots women. That is how we should be looking at it. And I'll just explain you why it is like that. Within SEWA, when we conducted a survey, we found out that 25% of the time spent by the women and the 40% of her money goes in energy access. And what is the quality of energy? Still dirty energy. Why I say dirty? Still they resort to biomass fuels and all those things. Accessing itself is difficulty, and what to speak about the drudgery associated with it. Women used to carry the wood on their heads. Still they are doing it, causing a lot of fatigue, the impact on their neck area and back pain related things. That is on a physical level. Now, if I take it at an health level, this kind of cooking has always proven to be very harmful for women. I mean, excessive smoke and all kind of respiratory diseases associated with it. And since a lot of time is gone in all these things, the grassroots women, she gets very less time available for having a better social life. So instead of working in silos of energy or cooking, we would like to consider this whole thing in a very holistic manner. That how it work, energy, food comes into the picture. And before we take this thing forward, I would request Prakriti Bain, can you please share that video that gives the real life experience of a grassroots woman who is trying to help things out?
Sure.
નમસ્તે, મારું નામ મીનાબેન પંચાલ છે. હું છેલ્લા 8 વર્ષથી સેવામાં જોડાયેલી છું અને ક્લીન કુકિંગ પ્રોગ્રામમાં હું ટીમ લીડર છું. આમ જોવા જઈએ તો બહેનો અને રસોઈ એકબીજા સાથે જોડાયેલા છે, પણ ચૂલા ઉપર રસોઈ કરવી એ સહેલું કામ નથી. 21મી સદીમાં પણ બહેનોને ચૂલા ઉપર રાંધવા માટે લાકડા લેવા જવું જ પડે છે. જો લાકડા જ ના હોય તો એ દિવસે એમનો ચૂલો જ બળે નહીં. હું સેવામાં જોડાઈ પછી હરિયાળા રોજગારી અંતર્ગત મને તાલીમ મળી અને ક્લીન કુકિંગ તાલીમમાંથી મારામાં જાગૃતિ આવી. એ જાગૃતિ મેં ગામડે બહેનોને પણ આપી અને બહેનોને ખૂબ લાભ થયો. અમારા જિલ્લાના 5000 શ્રમજીવી બહેનોને અમે એલપીજી કનેક્શન અપાયા અને તેનાથી બહુ ખુશ છે. અને અગાઉ એમને જે આરોગ્ય અંગે જે 2000-3000 ખર્ચો થતો હતો તે હવે બચે છે.
પહેલાં અમે ખાવા બનાવતો ચૂલા ઉપર તો ધુમાડાના લીધે ઓખો લાલ થતી અને ઓખો બળતી. અત્યારે અમે ગેસ ઉપર ખાવા બનાવીએ, જલ્દીને ફટાફટ ખાવા બની જાય.
ચૂલા પણ પહેલાં રોકતી હતી તો ટાઈમ બહુ જતો હતો. હવે ગેસ પણ વધીશું તો છોકરાનું ભણાવવાનું પણ ટાઈમ મળે છે અને ખેતરે જવાનું પણ ટાઈમ મળે.
અમે જે ગામડે બહેનોના ઘેર જઈને સર્વે કર્યું છે, એમના ઘેર સેન્સર લગાવ્યા છે, કેટલા તાપમાને ખાવા બનાવે છે એ સેન્સરમાં ડેટા અપલોડ થાય છે ને એનું એનાલિસિસ પણ હું કરું છું. આ સાથે બહેનોને પોસાય તેવા નાની એલપીજી બોટલો માટે અમે ગેસ એજન્સીવાળા જોડે સંપર્ક કર્યો છે અને એવી બોટલો બહેનોને અપાઈએ છીએ. આવો સેવાના હરિયાળા ઝુંબેશમાં જોડાઓ અને બહેનોને માટીના ચૂલા વાપરતા બંધ કરો અને એલપીજી અને સુધારેલા ચૂલા વાપરતા કરો અને બહેનોનું સ્વાસ્થ્ય અને પર્યાવરણ બચાવો.
Wow. I mean, in SEWA, every day we get to see sisters who are motivated in improving their life and livelihood related things and clean cooking related things. Now, if we see that we are having all these problems, so what did we do about that? So we connected with government. We did a lot of policy advocacy, and we told them that this health related issues and accessing the fuel, which was very difficult thing, and this having its impact on forest department and all those things. So with a lot of such dialogues and all those things, we were able to raise this voice and bring it to the notice of government. And we are extremely also happy to say that at some point of time Ujjwala Yojana from PM Ujjwala Yojana got released, and we were able to associate a lot of our sisters with that. And you saw an example of Meena Bain few minutes back. Now, in a SEWA overall picture, there are close to 50,000 women. We have been able to help them get connected to this scheme. But still we feel that there is a lot more we need to do, and therefore connecting the livelihood and clean cooking was something which we found to be very important. And Reema Bain's example, the video that you saw a few minutes back, that is a typical example how she became a regular I would say laborer in agriculture farms. Now she's an energy leader. We call her Hariyali Bain as in sister. So she's into getting the LPG connections, helping book the LPG cylinders, She's selling induction cookers, cook stoves. So now she has transformed into an energy sister. Now, having said that, if we continue more on these lines, whether it is methanol or LPG, that is where we will be able to, connect more with it. Now, despite doing all these things, still we are facing challenges. What are the challenges? Like, for example, in LPG, the subsidy, it comes after the LPG cylinder is purchased, and the government deposits the subsidy amount. So, which means that initially when the sister is buying the LPG, it's costing heavy. It's 850, 900 rupees, and that also becomes a little bit of big blockage in she going for a next refill. Many a times people are taking LPG connection, but they don't go for a refill. Why? This is the problem. And it has become more problematic with respect to COVID pandemic situation where the buying power has considerably come down and women are resorting again to the dirtier fuels like wood and that has insufficient combustion, soot, smoke, etc., etc. So smaller LPG cylinders might help, and still distribution agencies, they are not being able to reach out to every people, and that is also the reason a big challenge in clean cooking reaching to a lot of people. Having explained these issues and concerns, I would want to have a forward looking thing as to what can be done from this point. To begin with, I'll pick up from where I left in the previous section, which was about LPG distribution having challenge with respect to reach. So if we are thinking of methanol as an one of the fuel in the entire stack, in villages generally you find a stack of different kind of cooking methods. They will have biomass, they will have LPG, they will have induction depending on the situation. So if we are trying to fit in methanol in that big picture, we need to be having a very good understanding of why even LPG is today not reaching everybody. That becomes a lesson for how we can be successful in methanol. And the good thing about methanol that I personally feel is that it is that link which can help us to go from unclean and non-renewable cooking methods to clean and renewable cooking methods. So that is something which is very promising about methanol. And now, if I were to quickly jump on to what kind of environment is needed, what kind of policy advocacy that needs to happen for increased uptake of these kind of alternate fuels, would be, first of all, a lot of people in India, they need to get convinced about methanol-based cook stove, and the fuel. The combination is affordable and it is accessible, and they start seeing that methanol and LPG can go parallel, and support each other with respect to wherever LPG is not able to reach out, methanol comes into the picture. Second thing, that we need to create a very good ecosystem of supply chain of the fuel, which is methanol itself. Uh, I mean, a lot of cook stoves, improved cook stoves that have come, they use pellets and briquettes and all those kind of things. But still in village, the uptake is very low. The only reason, the fuel, which is the pellets and briquettes, they are not easily available. So we are not being considerate about the local availability of the resources and how to make those things locally so that people can reach out to. And another thing that we need to be extremely conscious is that fuel or cooking is a gender-based problem. So unless we have a gender inclusion in this energy sector in the form of either production, distribution, and consumption, we will continue to face this problem. When I say production, I'm not telling set up huge methanol plants, but can the output of a kitchen or something, like we have biogas, can something like that be done, which is in control of the grassroots women, which she can have that methanol getting produced locally, or some kind of a network we can have where she has that control. if methanol is available, it's a liquid-based thing. So if there are some kind of methanol-based canisters or anything, which the grassroots women, they can take the dealership, just like you have LPG dealership. The grassroots women, they should be able to take the dealership or the distributorship on by themselves. So either at a village level or at the most the block level, they can do it, and the reach would increase. Currently, that is missing, and that is creating a lot of problems. Now, how can we utilize the local resources? That is something which we need to do. Village level or district level, state level or country level. What is it we are trying to make available so that it has a greater penetration and reach to grassroots? I think it boils down to how do we minimize the import or transportation charges, which would make the cost high. So that is something which we need to look into, because a lot of grassroots women, they are still having a lot of issues with respect to buying capacity. So if it is if the methanol, say for example, it is marginally expensive than the biomass fuel, but less than LPG, I think we will be able to attract a lot of attention. The other thing we need to do is conduct formal action research-based survey across various states and see that how we can do behavior change. That is something which is very important, because while a lot of sisters in the villages, they do agree that it is not healthy to have smoky kind of cook stove, but they are still using it. And the behavioral change that we need to bring, that is something we need to connect at grassroots level, which in a way is a kind of a demand creation, if I may. And we need to work with local organizations or the last mile connecting organizations in bringing that change. From technology standpoint, can we consider retrofitting the existing LPG stores that they can use LPG at the same time methanol, because that would again reduce the cost of buying another cook stove. Already people are having LPG cook stove for which they have paid some money. Then every time new fuel comes up, and they have to buy another stove. That doesn't uh, gel well with the grassroots. And while we are doing all these things, the last mile connectivity organizations like SEWA or any of other organizations that will be very instrumental in getting this reaching out to grassroots people. There has to be a very scientific kind of a capacity building that needs to happen, where people are trained into understanding what this methanol is. Beyond just CH3OH, there are a lot of things with respect to methanol, which which needs to be taken to the grassroots level. But for that to happen, even the last mile connectivity organization, their capacity needs to be built. I think these are some of the points which are necessary to bring this change, or rather not complete change, but rather fit in methanol in the existing fuel chain, and that would definitely mean a lot to grassroots people. With that, I come to an end of the points that I wanted to share from grassroots people. Over to you, Prakriti.
Thank you very much, Devesh. You gave a very good comprehensive overview of the ecosystem which is required to promote clean cooking and the inclusion of women within the system. So it is a great segue to our next presentation, which provides methanol cook stoves across different regions. So I would now like to invite Robert Sagulin from Cleancook AB.
Thank you, Prakriti. So here we are. Okay, I will, within a few seconds, I will brief you on what company we are and who I am and so forth. Just on this first slide, which is the title, I have to say there is no reason why a healthier and more environmentally friendly cooking method could not be a sustainable, scalable, and profitable business. So this is what we're going to point out in my presentation. Yeah, I need to, there's some lagging here. How do I get back to page 2?
Robert, I'll change the slides.
Okay, you change the slide. Okay, so yeah, this is the content list. We can just skip that and also skip summary, and I take the summary as a last page. So basically, Cleancook was established 2015 through a management buyout from the Medic Group. The Medic Group, in turn, was a spin-off, or is a spin-off from the Electrolux back in 2002, Electrolux being a Gaia white goods manufacturer. So Cleancook produces ethanol and methanol stoves for markets where people traditionally cook with firewood, charcoal, and kerosene stoves. Our strategy is to continue our growth by executing on large projects such as the one currently underway in Tanzania. I will tell you more about that later on. Cleancook owns the tooling for manufacturing and the intellectual property such as patents, stove parts. Production is outsourced to a partner company in South Africa, but we will also consider partner companies for manufacture in other parts of the world like India. As you will hear about later on, we're working tightly together with Project Gaia and Harry, that we see as a leading non-profit authority in clean fuels. The company Cleancook is owned by me and my colleague Ted. We both have quite long experience in this market and with these products. So you can move page. Yeah, so what are the drivers for clean cooking fuel? And what are the key elements for social impact? I mean, we heard a lot about that, so you know most of this, and it was also mentioned in the previous presentation, but to reiterate, improved health, the WHO report states that 4.3 million people die annually from respiratory diseases and smoke generated by wood and charcoal and kerosene stoves. You have the environmental and climate change effect, deforestation, and emission creates or has as a part of the climate change, and some people say it's up to 80% of global climate change is from these emissions, including black soot. As a interesting fact here is that if you look at carbon and carbon credits, you can offset as much carbon as an average car consumes over a certain time period with just one use of one alcohol-based stove. So that's a huge factor for an important factor for any carbon credit exercise in the future in this area. You have a better safety, obviously, with these stoves. They can be extinguished with water, and they cannot explode. And it's a purely a pressure-less system. The cost is lower already now. The fuels are commodities and mostly cheaper on the bulk market than any other fuel in this trade. Time saving, we heard that in the previous presentation, you save hours per day by preparing meals, and actual cooking time is much shorter. And of course the gender factor there, with women collecting most of the firewood, etc. So please, next page. So the technology behind this is a non-pressurized canister concept, which has been used in Europe and the United States by the Methanol Group and previously Electrolux for many years. is engineered around the unique chemical properties of ethanol and methanol fuel, and originally used in the caravan markets, and now obviously into the developing markets instead. Concept is also suitable for other type of products like heaters and larger commercial cookers, which could be of interest for street vending, etc. So next page, please. So the products are carefully engineered to be safe, durable, long-lasting, efficient, and inexpensive to manufacture. Comet stoves are specifically made for flat pack shipments and local assembly. You have the 1-burner and the 2-burner pictured below there. So next page, please. There you see the Comet 1 that has as well as Comet 2, an easy slip-in side-mounted canister loading function. So next page. There is a Comet 2 in use in the kitchen in Dar es Salaam in Tanzania. Next. There you see a Comet 1 also in Tanzania. Next. And also the stoves can compete with LPG in urban markets or in any market actually, and it can be adjusted for higher end customer segments. Here you have the Nova 1 and Nova 2, and also usage in the kitchen. I think that's probably in Assam. Next page. Also some pictures from Assam. You can see there that the flame temperature is actually, as written here, the same in a methanol stove as in LPG. So that's good for cooking. Next page, please. Fuel canisters can be pre-filled with methanol for safer handling. This has been tested out in Nigeria, and that's where also this device at the right side is for automatic filling of fuel canisters. You can have a cap there for if you take out the canister and store it aside from the stove, it prevents evaporation. Next, please. So fuel supply. A steady fuel supply is obviously essential for a stove market. Although ethanol is often available for consumers, methanol is usually sold only in the chemical trade. Fuel quality is an important factor for stove performance. Methanol normally is not a problem as it is usually of a uniformly high purity and quality, whereas ethanol can be of uneven quality. For safety reason, we require fuel suppliers to denature cooking fuel with Bitrex, making it taste awfully, and we also urge them to use a coloring agent. And in some cases, there are also a smelling, like a perfume, you can use there to distinguish between this fuel and any other alcohol. During startup phase, alcohol cooking fuels need to be nurtured a little bit and supported by governments because they are new fuels, and this could be like VAT and duty exemptions, and it really would help out in the beginning. And as far as consumption, a family of 5 typically use 1 liter per fuel per day to cook 3 meals, and of course it depends a little bit. Stove stacking, as mentioned before, is also in the beginning maybe a factor. So it will take a while before the fuel demand is up to that level after you've launched the stoves on the market. Next page, please. Methanol versus ethanol. I think many of you are highly initiated in this anyway, but methanol burns very clean and has a high evaporative cooling effect on the canister, keeping it cool and creates an even evaporation. So cooking power is high and on par with the more energy-rich ethanol, and even with LPG. Although currently methanol is not always at hand locally, it has a huge potential in regards to cost and also potential in regards to scale. We all know that methanol is a hydrogen-rich fuel containing oxygen, and it produces a pure chemical without impurities that could cause concern while burning. So we recommend a mix of 5 to 20% methanol mixed into ethanol if that type of fuel is used to enhance combustion and take care of the impurities that usually is in ethanol. And of course, we all look forward to renewable methanol as a good future option with a promise for abundant fuel and also to replace fossil fuels and reduce greenhouse gases in the future. Coming back a little bit to the consumption, of course, you can also regulate the stove down to a lower power, and also in that case, the ethanol lasts a lot longer than the 4 hours that you have here for at the bottom line there. But the stove produces between 1.5 and 1.7 kilowatt of power. That's about the same as a small to medium-sized LPG stove burner. This is originally sized for fuel economy and the average family cooking requirements. So bigger and hotter burners can be built if needed, for example, for commercial applications. But there is a limit upwards with this technology, but it can be bypassed with other methods. The burner achieves flame temperature from 900 to 1000 degrees centigrade, which is about the same as an LPG flame, as I mentioned before. Burn rate of fuel is quite similar to those of LPG, proportional to the energy content of the fuel, which is obviously lower in methanol than in LPG. 1 liter of methanol is equivalent to the same amount of liquid LPG, but then that's a lot less in weight, obviously. And the canister holds 1.2 liter and provides 4-hour cooking if you run it on full power. But you can, of course, regulate it down to the simmering power, etc. The comment, next page there. Yeah, consumer tested. Yeah, it's been tested in Africa and Americas, and there's a wide consumer acceptance. People are pleased with the performance. They're also pleased with the safety and the ease of operation, and actually its portability there, obviously. The stove is backed of 30 years experience in the US and Europe as a leisure stove version. Stoves and the fuel cans are very durable with an anticipated lifespan of +4 years. The stove using methanol fuel meets the highest ISO standard for safety and emissions. These standards have been set by US EPA and WHO organization. And there has also been emission testing extensively in laboratories around the world, and we do have a number of third-party test reports available for this. Next page, please. Yeah, this is our business model in a nutshell. Cleancook provides affordable stoves to commercial distributors that can further subsidize stove by fuel sales in some sort of integrated business model. We keep a lean management in Sweden, handling sales strategy, communication, R&D, IP, and other company assets. Parts are really carefully engineered to be economical, efficient, and simple to fabricate, also locally, obviously. Production of stoves and canisters is outsourced to a partnering company right now with a good material supply base and a central location, which is key. And again, this local assembly concept with parts produced centrally is a good thing with a flat pack shipment possibility. We can also license production of complete stoves for local markets if the volumes are big enough. We use sales agents to identify distributors in certain new territories, new countries, and retailers and distributors we're facing now mostly are selling fuel already, so this will be a good complement to their business. Yeah, next page. You see some activities we had early last year in Dar es Salaam, and also to the right there's a picture of some guys doing the stovetop in breast brake and a press in South Africa, where the production is right now of parts. Next page. So targeted market segment. Well, in Africa, primary focus has been on families in urban and peri-urban areas currently using wood, charcoal, or kerosene. There's also been some sales to refugee camps. It's been working out well. You see that to the right, assembly activity in a refugee camp in Ethiopia, and to the left there is a coffee vending venue in Khartoum using our Comet stove. So please, next page. So ethanol and methanol stoves are alternatives during blackouts and peak electricity usage times, also like stove stacking, and it's equal in appeal and quality to LPG, and a proven substitute when there is interruption in the gas supply as well. Another market that is maybe less prioritized right now is off-the-grid cooking in the West, sort of like camping and boating and hiking, etc. Please, next. So what are the strategic steps to enter the market? As we see it, you first have this market evaluation phase activities like is fuel available, what's the demand of stoves, importation factors, assembly capacity, what's the competition like, is there finance, last mile distribution, authority support from government, etc., and is there some potential for carbon credits? And obviously doing this you focus on an urban market initially because logistically that works out better. And then you have the actual sales project phase where you exercise and sell products. You don't need to bring in a huge number of stoves, population a couple of hundreds. So you can establish a stove and a fuel price, establish some local assembly with equipment that we can provide upfront. And from there you make baseline studies, and maybe you need a study for investors. And I say it's rather more direct sales approach than retail at that stage. And then once you're out there and selling a lot, then you have to think about the marketing, but the manufacturing potential. What is the material supplier base? Of course, you should study that before, but now you should get it up and running. And you have to think about fuel bottling and transportation of fuels, which obviously we heard before is a big issue. Marketing, not to underestimate any marketing effort now because it's a new way of cooking. Regular or general logistics. It's good if you subsidize the actual stove by selling fuels, and you have to think about customer service and how you package the product if you sell it together with starter packages with fuel, etc. So next page, please. So these are our ongoing main business and a bit of the history here. We deliver on a one tender now in Tanzania, Dar es Salaam to be precise, and this is supported by UNIDO. 12,000 stoves out of the 110,000 has been supplied to date. All stoves will be and has been so far assembled by the local distributor using parts from our central facility in South Africa. If this is successful, we understand UNIDO will allocate more resources to this project in Tanzania and also replicate this in other countries in Africa and Southeast Asia. So yeah, this is obviously you diversify your revenue stream through fuel sales, and this could also be a part of our business as an integrated operational model for Cleancook or our distributor, or if we go together. So far, 80,000 stoves have been supplied and are out there on the market. This corresponds to 20 million accident-free user days, and we actually haven't had any accidents. So that is true, what we know about anyway. Next page, please. Yeah, you can read this. This is our biographies. That's my colleague Ted and myself. And then on the next following page, you have the contact details, and these will be available later. And let's jump back to the summary slide, which I think was page 3. Yeah, Cleancook, I mean, this is everything, I hope, or shortened in a nutshell. Cleancook offers unique combination of social impact and financial upside. Safe and proven technology using the best suitable fuels for existing infrastructure, which is important. Stoves designed for low cost and local assembly. Products obviously support environment, promotes equality, and reduces poverty through a healthier cooking platform, which is the aim here, basically. But it could still be profitable, that's what we say. Methanol is the best cooking fuel in terms of transport efficiency and emissions. So that's in favor for Methanol Institute. Diversification of revenue streams through fuel cells balances stove sales and adds a complementary scalable growth path. So you can grow this into, once you have a good setup, into just providing more and more fuel and stoves. And it actually, when you come up over a certain volume of stoves, there is really a good flow of fuel coming in. And as said before, we deliver on a one tender in Tanzania with a huge upside potential, and hopefully some follow-on project with that, both in Tanzania and other countries. Yeah, that was my presentation. So a question, Prakriti, if anyone wants to pose questions on the chat or any of that, is that possible? Is that kept open after the meeting? Because I have to rush away at 2 o'clock.
So what we'll do, if there are any questions, we could, pass it over to you, and maybe you could reply back to the participants.
Yeah, well, so you provide those by mail, basically, then? Or
yeah, I could provide it by mail.
Yeah, good. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Robert, for your presentation.
Yeah.
So now we'll move on to our next panelist, Harry Stokes, who's the Executive Director for Project Gaia. He will showcase different business models, as mentioned by Robert as well, looking into the financial viability of producing cook stoves fueled by alcohol fuel. He will also showcase a case study on India on methanol cook stove. So just give me a moment. I'll just share the slide. Harry, the floor is yours.
All right, thank you, Prakriti, and very nice to speak to everybody on the webinar. We certainly appreciate the opportunity to showcase the pilot study that we performed for the Assam Petrochemicals plant in 2018 and 2019. The PowerPoint that I have prepared is a bit long, so I'm only going to hit the highlights, and I would urge anybody who is interested to come back and read the PowerPoint in more detail, and then reach out to Prakriti or to us with additional questions or requests for additional information. So let me begin here. Do I have control, Prakriti, or
yeah,
do
Harry,
you want...
I'll do it.
Okay, let's see. I'm not getting any response here. Do you want to just go ahead and control it?
Yeah, I'll control it. No problem.
Okay, so advance, please. All right, it looks like you've skipped some slides.
That's in the end. Give me a moment.
Yeah, let's...
Do you mean?
You want to go back to slide number 1?
Yeah. So just a second. This?
Yes, there we go. There's an introductory slide here about Project Gaia. Essentially, we focus on alcohol fuels. Our expertise is with methanol and ethanol, and their applications for cooking and other household energy uses. Next slide. We believe that methanol and ethanol represent tremendous opportunities for cooking. The effort to improve the cooking environment for women and households has so far not been terribly successful, and the concept of improved combustion wood-burning stoves has not delivered results for consumers. So we advocate a move to more modern fuels, and we believe methanol and ethanol are the natural alternative to LPG. Next slide. So we're getting a lot of distortion on these slides, Prakriti. Do you know what's going on?
Is it fine now?
Well, there's distortion there, but we'll go ahead. So the Indian cooking energy policy is very ambitious, but the results have not been entirely satisfactory around LPG because of the cost of the cylinders, and as Devesh mentioned, the need to recover the subsidy on the purchase of fuel after the fact. So families have a difficult time in affording LP gas cylinders, and as a result, they are not cooking all of their meals on LP gas. Indeed, we estimate that 2 to 3 out of every 4 meals are still being cooked on solid fuels, even in homes that are using LPG. Next slide. India's energy policy is tremendously ambitious. The move to methanol cook stoves as an alternative or a supplement to cooking with LPG fits in neatly with India's existing energy policy. India will probably phase out its subsidy on LPG at some point, and at that time, then methanol will become an essential alternative to LPG for cooking, and should find its natural price at a price which is lower than LPG. So it should be a cheaper fuel than LPG once the market is normalized. Next slide.
So just give me a moment. I'll go back again to slides. Okay. Now.
Okay. As Robert mentioned, black carbon is a big issue with cooking with solid fuels. And the tremendous thing about cooking with methanol is the black carbon is essentially eliminated. Next slide. We all know what the situation is with urban air pollution, especially in northern India. And interestingly enough, cooking on solid fuels is a significant contribution to urban air pollution, including pollution coming from cook stoves outside of the urban area and drifting into the urban environment. And studies have been done on this, and scientists are able to actually track where the black carbon or the soot is coming from and what its origin is. So it's been well documented that cooking with solid fuels is a significant contributor to this kind of urban air pollution. Next. It is estimated that as much as 1.4% of India's gross domestic product is lost in the impact of sickness and death arising from air pollution to the people of India. So removing air pollution means not only healthier people, but also a more robust economy. Next slide. We've had tremendous experience with the Cleancook stove in Africa. As Robert mentioned, we've been working with the Cleancook stove since 2001, and we've been able to facilitate the placement of stoves in commercial consumer environments and even in refugee relief environments. And even in the refugee camp settings, the stove has maintained a perfect safety record. We've built over 500,000 liters of ethanol storage in the refugee camps and placed 12,000 stoves in the camps, accruing well over 5 million stove user days without a single accident. So the stove is just tremendously safe. Next slide. The study with Assam Petrochemicals began around the concept that the adsorptive fuel canister could become the packaging system for methanol, and allow methanol to be distributed already packaged inside the canister rather than distributed as a bottled fuel. This is a very unique canister. It adsorbs the methanol into the fiber and does not allow it to spill or drip out, but only to evaporate out. So this work with methanol cooking in India began as a concept around the canister as the packaging solution. Next slide. We did a hazards identification study on the methanol fuel supply chain. We did this in conjunction with the Methanol Institute and Shell International, which kindly paid for the study. And Det Norsk Veritas produced a very extensive study. So we've taken what you might say is quite a scientific approach to risk management on the supply chain for methanol fuel, and we believe that any risk associated with the methanol can be properly managed. Next slide. So I'd like to spend a few slides in looking at what the potential is for a safe, efficient, and scalable supply chain for methanol fuel. You know, methanol moves from the producer by truck to a fuel hub, and then from a fuel hub to a packaging facility and into the supermarket or into the corner shop, whatever the case may be. Next slide. And the idea behind the canister is that it will be constantly recycled so that when it goes out to the consumer who buys her fuel in canisters, she will return the canister to the shop, which will then be returned to the refilling operation and then go back out to the consumer. So at a later time, you can take a closer look at this diagram to trace the steps in the consumer supply chain built around the canister. Next slide. The canister can be filled automatically. You see here a refilling device which places the canister under negative pressure and fills the fuel in the canister without the release of any vapors and in a very rapid fashion. So these canisters can be filled each in about 10 seconds with a metered amount of fuel with no vapor escape, and you can install 10 or 20 filling heads at a refilling station so that you can refill thousands and thousands of canisters each and every day. And Devish mentioned the idea of canister refilling and selling actually being owned by a women's business or women's co-op. So we believe that a small scale filling and selling operation could be very feasible with these canisters. Next slide. This is a photo of a filling operation taking place in Lagos, Nigeria. And you see here canisters with snap-on elastomer lids. So the snap-on lid is one concept for sealing the canister. Next slide. This slide shows the concept of after your central distribution hub, you break down your supply chain to a series or a number of local refilling centers, which are very close to the consumer. and the canisters go back and forth from the consumer to the refilling center, and then back out into the community. So each town or even village could have its own refilling center, and methanol can be delivered by a small tanker truck to the filling center in the town. This means that the canisters and the methanol fuel can be delivered most efficiently into the local setting, and then the canisters revolve within the local setting without the cost of the canister having to go back to a big city for refilling. Next slide. And here is a design for a local refilling center, which could be placed on the premises of a typical petrol station. So you could do this refilling activity at a petrol station or in a similar facility where fuels can be handled safely. Next slide. You will see here a flow diagram of a tank process that can receive both methanol and ethanol and mix the two fuels into a homogeneous fuel which can be filled into the canisters. This means that if you're in the sugar producing region and you're close to an ethanol distillery, the distillery can provide its ethanol into the cooking process, and this ethanol is extended, and the supplies are vastly increased by the addition of methanol to the ethanol, which also improves the combustion of the ethanol. Next slide. Just another picture of the concept of a filling station, canister filling station, and the canisters can actually be sold out front with the oil and lube and other products at the petrol station. Next slide. And this shows a carrying case for the canisters. A carrying case can be built that allows a consumer to return 4 or 5 or 6 empty canisters and pick up 4 or 5 or 6 new canisters to give her household a week or a week and a half supply of fuel. The canisters, by the way, are very lightweight. Unlike an LPG cylinder, these canisters are lightweight. So when you carry them home full of fuel, all you have to do is transport the weight of the fuel, not the weight of a heavy metal cylinder. Next slide. And this is an example of a branding initiative with a fuel company in Nigeria, which has adopted this approach for cooking with liquid alcohol fuels. Their brand Swap to Cook. Swap out your canister, your empty canister, for a filled canister. Next slide. I should add with that brand, they were using peelable seals on the canisters. Now I'd like to move into the discussion of the consumer study we conducted for Assam Petrochemicals in their residential community adjacent to their plant in 2018 and 2019. Some 315 methanol fueled stoves were distributed in the residential community, and 155 of the households that were part of the study were intensively surveyed by Project Gaia and the team from Assam Petrochemicals. Next slide. Assam Petrochemicals is going through an expansion phase. They've been producing methanol for almost 50 years, and now they're adding a new methanol line. Next slide. So their capacity is jumping from 33,000 metric tons of methanol per year up to almost 200,000 tons of methanol per year. 200,000 tons creates a tremendous opportunity for cooking fuel supply, and the market for cooking fuel is probably going to be of great interest to Assam Petrochemicals, because it should actually pay a better price than the commodity price they can get for their methanol on the export market. Next slide. The surveyors from the APL staff conducted the survey. They visited the households at least once a month over 3 to 4 months. They were evaluating the methanol cook stove up against 2 other stoves that were used in the household, the LPG stove and the induction cooker. The methanol fuel was distributed free of charge to the households during the first month of the study, and thereafter the methanol was sold to the households at a price competitive with LPG. Next slide. Here's a photo of the logistics team. The team was overseen by the general manager of Assam Petrochemicals, Mr. Sazad, who is shown there in the right of the photo. He tracked this study very, very closely and managed it on a day-to-day basis. Assam Petrochemicals built a small filling station for the canisters. In this case, the canisters were manually filled outdoors, and then they were sealed with the seal that you see up in the top right of the canister. And each canister was engraved with a serial number so that the canisters could be tracked. Next slide. The consumers were given safety instructions on how to operate the stoves and how to manage the fuel canisters. And there you can see two pictures. To the left, an instruction on how to light the stove, how to peel off the sticker on the or the seal on the canister, how to insert the canister in the stove, and on the right side, how to properly clean and take care of the stove. Next slide. A 4-page survey was conducted, and you can review what the points were that we were researching with the survey tool. We compiled the results of the survey in a database, which allows us to really focus in on the results for each and every one of the questions that we asked of our consumers. Next slide. We also conducted what's called a controlled cooking test, which is a semi-controlled test using professional cooks. These professional cooks cooked 1 meal each on the LPG stove and one meal each on the methanol stove, and they timed the cooking. They metered the fuel use of the LPG and the methanol very, very closely to the precision of 1 gram in weight. And they also very carefully metered the food that was being cooked so that we could get very fine calibration on the specific fuel consumption. Next slide. The controlled cooking test acted as a quantitative check on the qualitative information that we were receiving from the household surveys based on the use of the stoves by the consumers. Now, in terms of survey results, we found that the methanol stove rated very well on speed of cooking, ease of operation, safety, cleanliness, and portability, the ability of the stove to be carried from room to room, as it was not attached, obviously, to a gas cylinder. Next slide. We also found that consumers were concerned that they had to fill their canisters frequently. Each family only had 2 canisters in stock, so they had to go back down to the logistics center to secure refilled canisters. And of course, that was an inconvenience for them. And they also requested certain modifications to the stove, especially with regard to the pot support, to the characteristics of the flame spreader, and a request for rubber feet on the stoves. We asked the consumers about their willingness to pay, and we generally got values back of up to $32 for the stove, but many people responded, we would buy this stove for anything less than the price of an LPG stove. And indeed, the methanol stove should be priced below the cost of an LPG stove. Next slide. Now, I'm not going to go into these results here, but they are available for your examination. We got excellent feedback on the use of the methanol stove, its speed of cooking, how it compared with the LPG stove, and the propensity of consumers to use the methanol stove in place of the LPG stove. And generally, the results were quite satisfactory. Next slide. And you can see here some of the survey results broken down as bar graphs. The stove got very high marks on the ease of regulation, on the ease of use, how comfortable it was to use, and above all on its safety. So many people remarked on the safety of the stove in comparison with an LPG stove. Next slide. One of the things that was constantly remarked on was the safety of the stove. In the Assam Petrochemicals residential block, there are single-family homes, duplexes, and apartment buildings. And in the apartment buildings, there was a special concern about LPG safety because an explosion in one kitchen could impact the safety of people throughout the apartment block. So there was a great deal of appreciation around the safety of the methanol stove and the fact that there was no risk of explosion or fire. Next slide. We were also pleased that the methanol stove seemed to be able to cook all the foods generally available, whether dal, chapati, rice, meats, stews, what have you. So the stove performed very well and quite similarly with LPG. Next slide. Okay, and the economy and the small size of the stove, the ability to fit the stove on the countertop was much appreciated as well. And in virtually all of the households, we found that the methanol stove was being used side by side with the LP gas stove and with the induction cooker, with all three stoves on the countertop. Next slide. With the controlled cooking test, we measured the cooking times and the amount of fuel used, and we found that the cooking times were virtually identical. The LPG stove was a little bit faster on some cooking tasks and equal on other cooking tasks. And we found that the rate of fuel use was exactly similar to the heat content of the fuel. And as Robert said, about 1 liter of methanol fuel was used to cook what could be cooked with 0.5 kilograms or half a kilogram of LPG, which is essentially 1 liter of LPG. So what that means is on a volume basis, 1 liter of methanol cooks identical to 1 liter of LPG. On a weight basis, that's 0.78 kilograms of methanol to 0.5 kilograms of LPG. Next slide. We can skip over this, but this is more detail about cooking equivalency between methanol and LPG. And we found that once the cylinder of LP gas, the 14.2 kilogram cylinder of LP gas, has reached about 800 rupees in cost, then this becomes competitive with the prevailing cost of methanol, which would be about 25 rupees per kilogram. So currently, non-subsidized, unsubsidized methanol fuel competes with subsidized LP gas at a cost of about 800 rupees per cylinder. Next slide. We can skip over these briefly, but let me just say that briefly, for any company or business that wants to get into the business of selling and distributing methanol stoves and fuel, we can work with that business to help them build a business plan. Next slide. We have developed a financial or a series of financial modules that take the business's inputs and assumptions and works through those assumptions with semi-automated calculation to help develop a complete set of financial reports for that business. And these worksheets allow the business to change and adjust its inputs and assumptions to develop a viable business which will properly cash flow. Next slide. Go ahead to the next slide. So these are some of the reports that we can produce with our financial module in working with the business. Next slide. Next slide. So in closing, let me just say that for methanol fuel producers in India, whether producing from natural gas or from a renewable resource or a waste resource where value can be added, the cooking fuel market can be a very lucrative market. It is technically much more simple to use methanol in a cooking market than blending methanol with gasoline. It is a market that can support prices equal to or better than export market prices. It is a scalable market, a market that can become very, very large. A mere 5% penetration of methanol stoves in the state of Assam would require 100,000 tons of methanol per year. It's a dependable market, one that once built would not go away. It would be a producer's market. It's a market that displaces imports such as LP gas, which is largely an imported fuel, and it is a market with high social dividends. So we see this as a tremendous opportunity for India to develop a methanol cooking market that could be extremely rewarding. Final slide, please. So we thank you for the opportunity to make this presentation. My colleague Wubshet is on the seminar listening in, and Wubshet is based in Ethiopia, and I'm based in the US, and we're happy to travel anywhere to meet with businesses and consumer groups to help advance the cause of cooking with methanol. And thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Harry Stokes. So I think you gave a very comprehensive overview of how methanol cook stove market could look like and the kind of business opportunity it offers. So now I would like to open the floor for questions. Just let me pull out questions for you. Okay, so Harry, as you mentioned about different opportunities about the value chain of the methanol cook stoves, what are the bottlenecks in the value chain that you possibly have experienced, given the case study that you have shared with us from your experience, and what would be the possible solutions to overcome them?
So first of all, there's the policy bottleneck. Government needs to enact conducive policies to allow the entry of methanol fuel into the market as a cooking fuel. They also need to regulate the methanol fuel and regulate the supply chain so that they can assure that the supply chain is being built and executed properly and safely to standard. So one of the things that we do, and we work with UN and development agencies, we write methodologies and standards for government to establish good policy and good standards. So that's one of the bottlenecks, is the enabling environment which government needs to provide. A second bottleneck is access to finance. Any business needs access to finance to pay for the infrastructure that it has to build out in order to execute its business plan. Third is taxation. Government needs to provide, low taxation or even tax abatement to methanol fuel to allow it to enter the market and grow to, an initial scale, so that the business can then be profitable enough to pay taxes. LPG enjoys a number of tax subsidies, both during importation and customs clearing, and then in sale to the consumer. And of course, it has a direct subsidy. Methanol does not need a direct subsidy, but it could benefit from a temporary abatement of value-added tax. So those are three bottlenecks. Then there are some equipment or infrastructure bottlenecks, and probably first and foremost among them is the canister itself. If the canister is to become the packaging vehicle for the methanol fuel, should it be built larger? Currently, this canister holds 1.2 liters of methanol and provides 4 hours of cooking. Should it be built larger, for example, at 3 liters, providing 2 to 3 days of cooking? So that's a equipment innovation that might need to take place, but with regard to the know-how and the technology, it's certainly very achievable. And Cleancook has already experimented with, design ideas for larger canisters.
Thank you, Harry. Certainly, it's achievable. Just, the bottlenecks that you've mentioned, specifically policy, of course, is the need of the hour to get a push from the government and financially as well. So another question for you. So what is the typical lifetime of the canisters? And is there any limit on the number of refills per canister?
In Europe and the US, the experience with the canister is that it will last 20 years.
Okay.
It depends on the quality and the cleanliness of the fuel that is being put into the canister. Methanol is produced as a very pure fuel, so we expect these canisters to have a very long lifetime with methanol fuel. In the case of ethanol, which is produced with impurities, the life of the canister can be shorter because of the buildup of impurities in the canister. Now, these canisters can be cleaned and refurbished for reuse. So they're very robust canisters. They're made of stainless steel, and inside they're made of a robust mineral and glass fiber. And these things don't physically degrade, but they can become dirtied or polluted and have to be cleaned. But the cleaning is not needed with methanol because it's such a clean fuel to begin with.
Thank you, Harry.
Same with the stove. The stove has a very long life, so one can expect 3, 4, 5 years of use out of a stove, and stoves can be built to last even longer than that. Cleancook built some stainless steel stoves for us, which are still in use in the refugee camps after 12 years of heavy use.
Okay, thank you, Harry. So now I move on to Devesh. So Devesh, as you've mentioned, you've been working around the clean cooking sector with women. So due to COVID, as women have been, impacted disproportionately, how how would you think, to bring in opportunities for women in this area?
Sorry, I had a very choppy voice. Can you repeat the question?
So I'll repeat it. So due to COVID, the women have been impacted disproportionately. How do you think we can bring in opportunities for women in this area?
Oh, wonderful. Okay. See, I would see this whole thing from two different perspectives. One is as an end user, women as end user. Like the presentation that went by. Of course, we are yet to reach a state where the methanol is getting imported with all kinds of benefits associated, and the production goes up here in India.
Mhm.
So one is selling of these canisters itself. See, I saw the frequency at which the canisters need to be replaced. It's like 1.5 day to 2 day. Every 1.5 to 2 days, we need to replace the canisters. So
Mhm.
it's a kind of a, if I may, FMCG kind of a thing where quickly we are able to sell and buy sell it to the end users. And again, safety related to it, maybe there are not such high regulations to set it up in a shop. So
Mhm.
as end users, that is one thing that I'm seeing that we can do that. Another thing that comes to my mind is that uh, if I see this as an opportunity of not from the end user standpoint, but from entrepreneurship that we develop amongst women,
Mhm.
then this could lead to altogether a different change in paradigm. Locally getting produced or getting filled, even if not produced, locally getting filled, being sold. So that is something that would help the women with respect to additional livelihood apart from that. Looking at what Mr. Stokes said, it definitely looks like a separate or altogether, or if I may, a complete business in its own for the grassroots women to, have a business out of it. So I think that would be very interesting. But yes, we are yet to see how much of it we can get it, and um, the study in Assam seems to be a very controlled environment experiment, at least according to what I understood. And but I do see quite a potential considering small size and the cost of it if it's effective. So we can definitely do that.
Yeah, definitely you made an interesting point that, women can be included in this, kind of a value chain and promote women entrepreneurship. And as you mentioned about the study could be, a move on to, in future, commercialization of methanol stores, which will involve women as women entrepreneurs. So including them in the business is, of course, an interesting idea. Also, just another question I wanted to ask. So, uh, as you've been mentioning that you've been doing behavioral campaigns to promote clean fuels with the grassroots level women, what kind of challenges have you faced to make them, or make sure that they adopt cleaner fuel or switch to cleaner fuels? Are there any best ways or sort of any solutions that will make them a switch to a more improved cook stoves?
Uh, I think that was a very, very difficult question you were asking. Uh, the reason being, if the behavioral change or the mindset change was so easy, we wouldn't have struggled so much. Like, despite women, they knowing that if I go for this biomass-based cooking, it is harmful for me, it's harmful for my children. She knows that. It's not that she doesn't know. But still, the shift does not happen for several reasons. I mean, I can list down few that are coming right on top of my head. Is again, sorry, please pardon me for again shifting back to LPG because that is relatively high volume clean cooking that we can think of these days. Uh, One is the price of LPG bundle, if I may. 14 kilograms of LPG that is available. It's very expensive right now. Can we have smaller chunks? Can we have smaller, like what we are doing with canisters of methanol? So That is a very prohibitive kind of thing. Second thing is that the support mechanism that we need to develop within the family. Generally, spending in India, it is still male-dominated society. You know, if a woman in the village, if she has to spend some money, she has to get the buy-in from the husband, from the father-in-law, from the mother-in-law. It is still heavy in that way. I mean, uh, unlike Western countries where, you know, by the age of 16 or 18, you know, people are out of their houses and they have very independent life. So that's not the case in rural India. And what happens is if those family members are not seeing value in it, they will not allow the change. That is the second. Third thing, what we found interesting was that we did campaigning in the schools that you know, children who are eighth grade, 10th grade, 12th grade, that age group, we gave them all the scientific way of thinking that how your mother would be affected because of this, how you are getting affected, how your father is getting affected. It made difference. They were able to push back. You know, see, here we are thinking of mindset change, and mindset change sometimes comes out of logic. Sometimes it comes out of emotional push that you get from the family member. Like, you know, if the daughter or the son is telling the father and the mother that no, we need to change, it helps. I wouldn't say that immediately it will bring the change, but that helps. If not immediately, at least 5 6 years down the line, when she is getting married or he is getting married, you know, they will know that I have to go for that kind of a cooking method. But that is again too far in the future, 5 6 years. I don't think so. Companies are interested in that way. Sometimes people are interested in, you know, quick ROI for their investment. But I don't think so. It's that kind of a business. So that is one thing that comes to my mind with respect to behavioral change. And the last thing that I can think about is that the cook stoves, we had this so-called improved cook stove, which would use pellets and all those things. And we have these LPG stoves, and the prices were comparable. So, you know, there was no motivation for them to shift. And so therefore, you know, we try to work with the distributors that, you know, why don't you give them some schemes, you know, they pay in 3 EMIs or 6 EMIs. Then the level of uptake of those stuffs kind of increased. So yes, the finance is still a very big problem in India, and more so after this Corona thing. People are very, 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 they have been pushed back, kind of 7 8 years back, you know, with respect to economic situation, and they are resorting to all, you know, whatever is the waste coming out of agriculture, whatever is the locally available wood. What is it called? I keep forgetting. Acacia. That is, and I know the name in Hindi, but not in English. I think acacia is the thorny plant, right? Which it kind of grows near. Yeah. So they cut it, they use that, and, you know, all those methods are again coming back, which is very unfortunate. Sorry, long answer for a small question, but it was a tricky question, Prakriti.
Actually, said in a very light way that, you know, of course, cooking is very personal, and finance is one of the key biggest drivers for, you know, adoption of cook stoves such as methanol. Thank you, Devesh. Now I'll move on to Robert. Robert, there's a question for you on, so the Cleancook has modified the material for Indian cook stoves, and they've been particularly distributed in Assam. Is there any material or modification that depends on the weather conditions that you do to the cook stoves?
Well, there are some different grades. I think the version that they were using in Assam and still are using is okay for humid climate. We have some thoughts about the other version there that could be because it contains some galvanized steel, but we have made some changes, and we can just easily change the material to a higher grade if that is specified, and in particular the what we call the pot support, which is also a bit wear and tear, where you have your cooking pot with a wearing factor, the flame, etc. And also the the pot support can also be changed for various sizes of pots and different cooking cultures. So yes, we can change, but it's always a matter of cost and of course the life span for a product.
Another question to this, what are the possibilities to fill the containers of the canisters with methanol with inert gas as well as and have a longer supply through low pressured flow to burners?
Yeah, this concept that we're using, it's not good for any. I mean, you can extend it. You can basically extend the size up to a certain limit, but it becomes unpractical because you need that ratio between diameter and height for the capillary forces inside the canister. And once the canister gets too much of a diameter, the stove gets too big and you have to pay extra for the material. But then if you figure out some kind of chicken feed and how you can sort of automatically feed, then you're into a different technology. I'm not saying that that is not possible, but we have decided to keep it simple and just use that very well engineered and appropriately sized canister for our products. When it comes to commercial stoves for street vending, etc., one may think about making a slightly bigger canister that is then obviously higher and wider. But I think to have some kind of refilling arrangement while the burner is still having a flame, it's not good for safety reasons also.
Okay.
Is that answering your question?
Yeah, I believe so.
Yeah.
So I think we are just about close to 6 o'clock in India. So what I'll do just to conclude, I would like to thank you all for joining us as well as our participants, and apologies for the technical glitches earlier. You can download the presentation from the handout tab, and thank you everyone for joining us today for today's webinar.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you for listening and arranging. Bye-bye.